Good evening, it's William from WCP Models here. So in the last video we managed to get this chassis rolling, but it's not exactly ready to run. So what we're going to do in this video is get the drive shafts and we're going to get the steering gear installed onto the chassis. And then the last video will be actually running it and test driving it. So we're just going to take this body off and we're going to turn this upside down. And now what we're going to be looking at is just what we're doing with the drivetrain. So I've got the motor wires here, I've fed the wires from the ESC through there. But what we're going to do here now is get the drive shaft. So metal drive shaft, grub screwed onto the rear axle. And in here we have a centre drive shaft support. So I've actually pressed a bearing in already with a little brass bushing. And what we're going to do is take another bearing, push it in from this side, and a brass top hat bushing. So that's now going to sit in there like that. We're now going to take one of these universal or cardan joints. Now there's one here that's got a 3mm hole in both ends and one that's got a 4. Now the reason why I've got one with a 4mm is because the actual drive motor shaft is a 4mm. So we're going to put that one on first. And it is always nice to actually align all the flats so that, you know, when we put the grub screws in, they will actually tighten down onto the flat areas. Okay, now we're going to take one of the metal 3mm drive shafts that we've made. It's got a little flat machined into it that we've milled at home. And this is actually going to be 25mm long. So we're going to insert that into there. And now we're going to take the second cardan joint and put that onto there like that. Right, so now we've got the front drive shaft assembly just roughly in. And now we're going to take the second 3mm drive shaft. And what we're going to do, and sorry, this one is 22mm long, roughly. We're now going to insert this from the centre drive and through. And let's just make sure we line up the flat. And we're just going to nip that in there like that. And then what we can do is, now that we have this part of the drive shaft sticking out, we can then fix our rear drive shaft. So there we have our drive line. And now what we need to do is install all of the little grub screws, and we're also going to Loctite these in as well. So I'm going to take the little grub screws, put a little dab of Loctite on there and put that in. And just give it a little shake just to make sure it's going in flat and turn that. Right, so that's that one done. Now I'm going to take this one out that we nipped up earlier, and I'm going to put some Loctite on there. So again, a little dab of Loctite. Make sure the flat is visible. And get this one in place again, nice and tight. Right, now we should be able to turn this drive shaft and start getting the alignment of the middle shaft. Again, another grub screw, dab a Loctite. Make sure that's getting in there on the flat. Again, nice and tight. We're going to turn the drive shaft and we're going to put in, yeah, you guessed it, another grub screw with a little bit of Loctite. And we're going to get that installed there. So if we just wiggle it, make sure we're getting it on the flat, and there we have it. Now we've got our drive line. So this one's still loose, but what we're going to do now is rotate, get the drive shaft And yep, we're here again. Another grub screw and another bit of Loctite. And we're going to put this on here. Now here we want to try and make sure it's as tight as possible, but we're just going to hand tight. We don't want it clamped too tightly because we don't want there to be a lot of friction on the mating faces. So there we have it. Right, so now we have the drive line attached and put the lid on the Loctite. So now you can see that we have the drive line installed and in place. Okay. So the next job now is to get the steering in place. So I've made up some arms. Basically they consist of some M2 threaded rod, M2 nuts, and then M2 rod ends. Now I've measured these so they'll have a nice parallel setup, but you can actually play with the length, so you can actually have toe in or toe out. You might find that just playing around with them will actually give you a little bit of a slightly better setup for steering control. So we're going to put an M2 through the rod end, and we're just going to screw it in on the back. So the back of the hub, there's like a short arm, and the front of the hub has a longer arm. I'm just going to put in this on both sides. What we will do is we will put in a M2 washer on the back, so that it's actually spreading onto the plastic. But I'm just going to increase the length of this arm because it's not quite sitting parallel. So we'll put those on there as they are. So there we have the front steering, and the next step is we actually have to connect it to the servo arm. So what I'm going to do, just to make this easier, I'm going to take the servo horn off the servo, and there's a tiny little Phillips head screw. And then you see on this arm, I put a little kink in it. That's just so that we can get clearance when it's actually going through the steering angle. When the servo is turned, just going to nip this up. There we have that. I'm going to take another M2 and thread this through the rod end on the short arm, and then through, it doesn't really matter which side, but I've just chosen on this case the left hand side, and there we have it. So when we operate the servo, we're operating the steering. There we have it. And all these suspension arms and steering arms, sorry, are clear of the suspension component, so when it actually turns, it's not actually touching anywhere. So there we have it. And you need to be really careful with these servos, don't want to put too much pressure on them. Need to connect that one up, but there we have it. So we've got our front suspension and steering connected, we've got all our drive line connected, so we've got all our suspension. So the next video we'll be getting all of the electrics all sorted up, and then we'll be test driving the vehicle. So I'm just going to put the main body on, so let's just tuck these wires in nicely, so through there, turn the model around, feed it onto the front, and then pull very gently, and all the wires will be tucked in there with the receiver under the front bonnet. But yes, there we have it. I suppose what we could do is we could put the steering wheel and steering shaft in. So they go in like this. So what we can do is just put that on there, and then that will be positioned towards the driver. And then we have a little steering wheel as well. Excellent. Thank you for watching. Take care. Good night.